Good evening, good evening, good evening. And as the title says, I saw an interview online that somebody from DOGE was finally speaking out. And it was a very interesting interview. And frankly, I learned a lot from the video and the interview. A lot of it unsubstantiated, but we'll take it for what it's worth. Um, but first, before we get into that, there was a massive explosion at a Tennessee munitions factory, and it looks like everybody who was working there tragically lost their life. And if you've seen some of my videos, I'm a huge proponent of manufacturing. I'm a huge proponent of manufacturing in the United States. It's in my DNA, and this is an awful situation. And so, just hopefully, some safety measures can be implemented and they can find out what the cause of the explosion was, and the families can have some peace and comfort, because it doesn't look like there were any survivors. That being said, we'll continue on. So let's unpack DOGE a little bit real quick, because a lot of shit has happened since then. But this was an Elon Musk-led initiative that brought in a whole bunch of sketchy young hackers, like Big Balls, Fuzzy Navel, whatever their screen name or hacker names were, and Zero Cool.
I got a record. I was Zero Cool.
And
Zero Cool crashed 1,507 systems in one day.
Who doesn't want to hack a Gibson? It's a thing. But this guy, there was, from my memory of that time, there was one big holdout in the Trump administration. It was really weird. It still is weird for anybody to really stand up to Donald Trump or Elon Musk. But then again, this is the guy who gave Elon Musk a black eye and apparently did a linebacker tackle of him in the Oval Office, or in the White House anyway. And that's Scott Bessent. And this guy giving the interview worked for Scott Bessent. And it seems like a truly legitimate role, because at the time you had these DOGE crew, these young DOGE guys, hackers, just invading various government offices and taking over the computer files and everything, and randomly shutting down things, trying to essentially steal the information. And there were multiple news articles, even at that time, that for some of that information that they received from these agencies, it immediately wound up in either Russia or China. So for sure, there's a lot of backdoors and everything else in our systems from that first February-March timeframe. But this guy was brought in essentially by the Senate to have an actual, he's not like a Department of Government Efficiency guy out of the White House. He was brought in as the CIO for the Treasury Department, specifically the IRS. And he was given a specific task and authority, unlike the rest of the DOGE crew. Now, he does seem to provide cover for DOGE, and that's fine. But I'm going to look at a few of the video, like just some snippets of it that stood out to me. But first, at the time, I certainly had a lot of arguments with family, friends, disagreements about DOGE, what they were doing, and government efficiency. And maybe at that time, I should have clarified my positions a bit better. But in the spirit of, honestly, when I'm wrong, I am fully willing to admit that I am wrong. So I was wrong.
I'm stupid, you're smart. I was wrong, you were right. You're the best, I'm the worst.
Now, let's get into some of my counter arguments, because it's me. I'm never totally wrong. And there are some people out there that would definitely agree with that. Yes, there is government waste and efficiency. Yes, there are things that need to be cut. Is it as mindless and brainless and reasonless as this guy makes it seem? No. So let's take a look at this first clip right now.
I was originally brought in through DOGE in March. So that's when I started. I was put in at the Treasury Department with my primary focus being the IRS.
First off, he says he started in March. As you can see, I'll put it up on the screen here, or just in the corner or whatnot. Wikipedia and some official news articles indicate that he did not start until May. So he's already off by about a month on his actual start date, but that might be just how long it took for him to get his official credentialing as to what he was doing. That being said, it does not appear that he was ever affiliated with like Big Balls or the other guys that were, you know, raiding the FBI, raiding USAID, going into various departments and ransacking the place essentially. So it does not appear that he was affiliated with them. So we will kind of take what he says as legitimate. Now I'm going to play the second clip.
We put effectively the entire leadership team of IRS IT, which is about 50 people, on administrative leave, which we can get into what all these terms mean, which effectively means we're removing them from their roles. We're not firing them, but we're putting them on leave, and we're replacing them with the people who are technical enough to do the job. And that requires a lot of courage. Nothing like that had ever been done before, as far as I know.
That's, sure, put people on administrative leave. I don't have any, there's no issue with that. I think he's going to get into it in another clip, but yes, absolutely. There are issues with government and the meritocratic methods of promotion within the government. And there certainly needs to be some updating as far as expertise and how to do things. As an example, I have a friend who has an international, he got his International Masters of Business Administration. And he immediately went to work for a government agency in procurement. But his background, there was nothing in his background in procurement or purchasing or anything else. You'd almost have been better served to hire like a purchasing agent from another industry or something to administer the purchasing. That's just a fact. But being put on administrative leave is not necessarily a bad thing. And certainly if you have to do that in order to fix things, then, you know, have at it. So then we're going to move into this next clip.
Promotions are largely tenure-based. So just by being around long enough, you end up in these roles. That's a whole set of problems in the government, is that almost everyone in the performance reviews, almost everyone gets a 4 or a 5, no matter what. And so it's very hard to make sure that the people in these roles are actually the ones who know what they're doing. So some of these folks are really hardworking, good people. They're just put in a position where they could not be successful. And I talked to some of them afterwards, and like, they're obviously not happy. But they didn't lose their jobs. They're just on administrative leave so that we can shuffle things around. But, you know, it's a lot of them really understand why this is happening, and they know deep down that this is for the best, but it is.
All right, so the only issue I have with this is that this is not just a government problem, right? This occurs in any organization. Competent people get promoted until they are over their skis and suddenly aren't able to do the job anymore. There's a specific term for it, but the term escapes me right now, but there is a specific term for it. So this is not just a government problem. Now, the performance reviews and the union stuff, that's common. Now, I will say this, though. There's been a common refrain for 10 years now that there's some type of civil service, administrative deep state in the government that really runs things. And this sort of statement just kind of blows a hole in that, right? Because if these people are just so incompetent and unwilling to work and lazy and everything else, it's a hard sell to say that they are just controlling everything behind the scenes. So the whole drain the swamp and deep state and everything else, I don't buy it. There's a phrase I heard a very long time ago, and it is a kind of more of a society correlation,
decision makers,
business
technical
correlation to
decision makers
Occam's razor.
in technical
And
decision making
it
roles.
essentially
And so we were able to
says
make
that
decisions way
never
faster.
ascribe to
And
malice
I remember one of our best
that which can be ascribed to stupidity or incompetence. And I think we're kind of at that level, right? With what he says there, is that these people aren't really bad people. They're just either not equipped or trained for what they're doing, or they were just never good enough to do it in the first place. And they might never be good enough, but it's not possible to get rid of them. And then he'll say something in a clip that I'll have later that perfectly illustrates that. Now let's move on to the next clip.
What it is that you're doing. In my case, I'm really just there to fix the computers.
America has the fifth.
Okay. I included this clip, that clip specifically, because this is one of the good guys. I think his name is Sam. What is it? Sam Korkos. Obviously, he has a little bit of a naivete about government and there's statements he makes in this video about executive orders and how well the executive order should be followed, and other just kind of naive statements. And this gets into a whole other issue of that just because he's a CEO and he's a really good tech guy and everything else, he's not an expert in everything. And that government and functioning and navigating a bureaucracy is a skill that he just might not have. But I love that he says that, because I can get behind a DOGE that does that. We're here to fix the computers. We're here to fix contracting. Great. But they're not lawmakers. And I think that's part of the problem, is that as a tech CEO or something like that, he doesn't have competing interests fighting each other over various things. And let's be honest here. There are certain government departments where it's in everybody's vested interest that they don't function properly. And then we're going to get in there's a clip that I wasn't able to find because it's a very long interview. It's about almost 2 hours, and I had a lot of difficulty finding it. But he states how he was looking into contracting, and it's this minority and disadvantaged contractor procurement system, which it's minority owned, women owned, veteran owned companies get preference when it comes to procurement. They kind of jump the line. They don't have to go through this lengthy contracting and permitting process. They just get to jump in. And it has like a 50 million cap. So he was looking at contracts, and it was like 49.5 million, 49.5 million, 49.5 million, 49.5 million. And then, of course, that is waste, fraud, and abuse that I think every American can kind of get behind, because there are no deliverables behind it. He found that these companies were doing very little to earn that money. But there's been a solution for that. It goes into the way that municipal or federal budgets are formed. It's an incremental budget. And in government, particularly in a bureaucracy, the budget that you control is your power. It is status. If you're a director of whatever government agency and you only control a $10 billion budget, you have substantially less authority than somebody who is controlling a budget in the $200 billion. That's the pecking order amongst civil servants. Where's your budget at? And so, and I, believe it or not, I learned this in college. I truly did. That as a public employee in charge of a department, it is in your best interest to spend your budget to zero, regardless of whether it's needed, regardless of whether the programs that you're spending it on work. Because when it comes budget time, if you don't spend your entire budget, it's at that point that you're in danger of getting cuts, because it's incremental. They'll see, oh, you only spent 80% of your budget, so we're only going to give you 85% of your budget, previous budget this year. Whereas if you spend it all, then you get an increase. You get an overall budget increase because of the way incremental budgets work. The solution to this has always been zero-based budgeting. You start with a clean sheet every year. But for political reasons, we can't do that. It was actually Jimmy Carter, President Carter, that did the most to try and implement zero-based budgeting, and then it was Reagan that kind of abandoned it. But that is ultimately the solution to waste, fraud, and abuse. So if DOGE were to come out and say, no, we're going to make a push to do zero-based budgeting, and that is the solution to all this, I could get behind that. I think it is the solution. It was always creepy, or I wouldn't say creepy, but it was disturbing to me how in actual courses on how to manage public departments, you're being taught this. The other one was when, this is just an aside, this is not pertinent to DOGE or the video at all, but the other one that was disturbing to me was that you are taught if you're managing a public department facing budget cuts or some type of shutdown or something like that, that you direct all the cuts or the shortfall to the most popular programs that help the most people so that the most pain is felt by the public immediately. That will shorten or even get your budget increased because of public outcry. That was highly disturbing to learn in your early 20s. Next clip.
I mean, the $37 trillion.
Where's that?
Right over there.
Over my shoulder?
That's really the top line number.
Okay.
It's just an astoundingly large number. We have $100,000 in debt per citizen.
And it's going up at about $100,000 a second.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay, so that one, yes, the debt is huge. It's massive. It was mostly in tax cuts. Donald Trump and the tax cuts, both the first administration and this current one in the Big Beautiful Bill, have added more to the national debt than the previous 3 or 4 or 5 presidents combined. He is responsible for most of that $37 trillion in debt. And what are we going to do? Because it's not like you can tax the bottom 50%, most middle class and under anymore. Look at, I'm going to put this up there, but there you go. Just by facto of where the wealth is distributed, any tax increase is going to impact the wealthy more because that's who got all the tax cuts. That's where the money is. You say, why did you rob a bank? Well, because that's where the money is. Why do you tax the wealthy? Because that's where the money is. It's not in the bottom 50%. It's not with the middle class. It's not with the lower middle class. It's not even with the upper middle class. It's there. It's at the top. And until we do something about that, I mean, it's not like we can't function as a company doing that or a country doing that. We totally did. Our taxes were much higher for most of the history of this country. It was only with Reagan tax cuts that it really started trickle-down economics, which never trickled down. I mean, those charts are widely available. That was the start of it. And as someone whose family owns several small businesses, it definitely didn't help small businesses either. And that was the whole thing of the tax cuts. And then at the start and trickle down was that, small business owners, they're disproportionately impacted by these because they can't blah, 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 blah. I can tell you trickle down economics didn't help us either. Next clip.
Performance review, I think 3 times in a row. It's multiple times in a row. And they're spaced out pretty significantly. If you ever give somebody a poor performance review, the unions come after you, and it's like 10 times more work to deal with it. And so a lot of people just give everyone a 5 and just like move on. So the most common way that I've heard from inside of government, people have been there for a long time, the most common way to get a poor performer off your team is to promote them.
Okay, technical decision makers and technical decision making rules. It's as if he just kind of woke up and found this. And he does talk extensively about how the CIO only makes like $160,000, $170,000 a year, and there's some statute that says this. I'm sorry, I like the guy, but again, it's the expert paradox. Just because he's good at tech doesn't mean he's good at a whole other host of things, and he shouldn't be taken as an expert in them either. So the statute is actually there in laws that no government employee can really be paid more than Congress or the president. So that's why whenever you see Congress giving themselves a pay increase, it's actually so that they can pay more to positions like CIO. But until Congress decouples everybody else's pay from their pay or the president's pay, this is always going to be a problem. He should probably know that. It's not just like some weird arcane statute. This has been in place for a very long time. It can be changed very easily, but Congress isn't going to do that because that's their justification for giving themselves a pay increase. And if you remove that justification, then rightly, when they go to increase their pay, people are going to be fucking pissed because the favorability of Congress is in the single digits. All right. General thoughts, because I didn't have enough time, is that yes, there is waste, fraud, and abuse. Yes, there is reasons behind it. Some of them good, obviously most of them bad. I do think this video and what he says kind of debunks the whole idea that there's some deep state conspiracy that's a shadow government of career civil service members that are controlling the government from behind the scenes. No. Again, never ascribe to maliciousness, that which may be ascribed to incompetence or stupidity. And if you really think back into your work careers and everything else, you'll see that generally tends to be true. Are there exceptions? Of course. But for the most part, that's kind of what happens. All right. I appreciate it. Please hit like and subscribe, and everybody have a great night.